Well, the Prince Claus Fund was established in 1996, so that's almost 20 years ago. And essentially, the fund is a tribute to the work and the personal commitment of Prince Claus, which was really a very big believer in culture as a means to create that development, whether it was social or economic, in areas where not only cultural expression but also freedom of expression, also countries in conflict and in any sort of tension, in order to allow that really to develop. So what really that translates into is the slogan that we use also to describe the work that we do and the sort of commitment that we give, and that is that culture is a basic need. The way that that works out, obviously, is, you know, we through the work that we do, we try to emphasize also how culture actually is an indispensable aspect of societies in the contemporary world. It's one way to actually show how also culture plays this vital role in bridging communities that might actually be going through a conflict or having pursued, experienced a conflict, going into this phase of reconciliation. So it's about using culture then as a means to, if you will, nurture the social fabric. So that's essentially, as a basic need, it means that everyone has that culture, everyone has the affinity with culture. We believe very much that also the artistic expression has what we then like to call a more sort of nurturing effect on humans, on communities in general, on society. So in that sense, we see it as being a very relevant link to countries that are going through, whether it's social tensions or post-conflict environments or conflicts are happening in places like Syria, for example. So this is a little bit of that background with culture as a basic need. Going from the question of, you know, culture as a basic need, it means that we have certain ways how we pursue this activity and how we make things happen and allow for change to take place, allow for excellent cultural organizations or, you know, outstanding artists to do their work is essentially by supporting them. And one way that we support them is also by bringing together 10 of the most, let's say, groundbreaking, innovative cultural artistic organizations from around the world. And this is really what the network partnership is. It's basically a consortium of international organizations that are affiliated with the Prince Claus Fund on a structural level, where then for 3 years we support the, you know, the activities, the cultural and artistic activities of these organizations. And then, so it's really a give and take relationship. So what we get back then as the Prince Claus Funds from our network partners is essentially a lot of the on-ground information. It's very much the contextual know-how. It's very much the sort of the understanding of what really is happening on the ground, but also how we can in fact use the international knowledge coming together and then supporting the work that we do. So if you will, the network partnership is really the backbone of all the cultural activities that we're doing within the Prince Claus Fund. And what that means is essentially that 2 times a year we bring all our network partners together in one place to really discuss, to exchange the knowledge, but also to share contacts, to talk about, you know, what's in, what's out, what's really pushing the cultural and the artistic dynamic within countries vis-a-vis the political, economic, the social situation, and how we can actually improve this, and how through the network partnerships, through this commitment of the Prince Claus Funds, we actually make a match. So we try to really cater to each of the regions where we're active through the network partners. So if you will, they're also the eyes and the ears of the Prince Claus Funds on the ground. And then twice a year, we're very lucky to, on a structural level, bring everyone together. But obviously that relationship with the network partners individually is an ongoing relationship, which is really nurtured on a regular basis. You see, I think what sets us apart from the regular, if you will, donor agency is that essentially we build up on partners, and we build that based on a relationship which is equal and based on a partnership and an exchange. So in principle, I think we do not have that mentality of donor and sort of grantee, if you will, but more, this is also the name of the partnership, is a network partnership. It's really an exchange, and it's based on values which are then mutual. It's values on respect, it's values on also understanding, it's values also on trust, obviously. So I think that trust also goes beyond financial. I think the trust that we very much rely on is the expertise that we gain from the network partners. So I think the network partners, they have an exceptional insight into the sort of work they each respective network partner is engaged in within the cultural sphere. But on the other hand, I think it also enables us again to be the eyes and the ears on the ground. So in that sense, I think for the nature of that partnership, I think it's very much about the next step in this mentality of being a donor and a grantee. I think we generally see the world as a much smaller entity than you know the different political and social and economic divisions that are out there. I think we tend to really also highlight the quality, obviously, that's coming out of not just the network partnerships, but generally of the cultural, let's say, offer that you get to see in all the countries that the Prince Claus Fonds works in. So essentially, I think highlighting that quality and making sure that that quality is compatible with the values that we share, I think is the match that really works the best in order to really also bring out the best in the network partners that we have, and generally with the partners that we work in outside of the network partnerships, as well as also give us a very, I think, workable format to really, based on mutual respect, to be able to actually do as much work as possible and generate as much as, I think, visibility and recognition for the relevance of the work that we do through culture in development. I think that's the trick. I think it's more organizations like South Asia Trust. It's organizations like our network partners actually who do that convincing for us. So if you will, we are more of the agent that's also trying to understand better, you know, what are the highlights, what are the best actors, where is the quality in terms of culture, and specifically related to the culture that's making an, let's say, social impact, as a development impact, economic impact. So I think in that sense, it's also about highlighting those best practices. I think part of it is also a historical commitment. I think it's also part of it is understanding the relevance of the work that you're doing, the impact of the work that you're doing, but also the real people behind it and the changes really that are happening. I think what you see generally in Europe, I think anyway in the last 10 years, is really developing the notion of culture from an idea of cultural economics to creative industries. And what that means is that essentially, you know, one looks at culture and arts as a means to really stimulate the economy. And I think what we're trying to also indirectly do from the work that we do and the outreach of the cultural organizations and the different cultural activities that we support is to see how much actually that creates opportunity on the ground, to see also how that opportunity develops or it translates into some sort of let's say, social development, whether it's education, whether it's knowledge share, talking about knowledge economy, obviously. So it's also about looking at what the highlights are of such an interaction. I think, on the other hand, what helps us or supports us in understanding also how we can be more of service in highlighting the benefits of the work that we do is simply by talking about it more. I think it's simply about being very savvy in terms of how do we create more visibility, how do we create more communication around it, how do we also make sure that actually the entire spectrum of the diversity of activities is done in a smart way. It's articulated in a way which is, I think, not only understood by an elite, if you will, but also the relevance of which is really picked up very easily by people who are not necessarily immediately engaged by arts or by culture. So I think when you're talking about sort of the legitimacy and the responsibility of the work that we do, I think obviously the last 10 years a lot has changed, and I think the idea of what it means to be a cultural institution, a fund, a foundation in that sense, has also meant that that responsibility needs to be re-articulated. It needs to create that new legitimacy. And I think that in the past few years, I think we have definitely been able to really sort of create as much as possible that linked to society. So I think the sort of giving back does not only necessarily happen in Europe. I think the convincing might have to take place there, obviously, also because we're situated in the Netherlands, specifically in our case in Amsterdam. But it goes, I think that responsibility also goes far beyond. I think it also reaches out to our grantees, it reaches out to our partners, it reaches out, in this case, also to the network partnership. So I think in that sense, that responsibility does not only stay with the fund, with the Prince Claus Fund, but it goes beyond. And I think part of our work has also been to instill that capacity development within our local partners, I think within the people that are doing the work, because you see, I see this really as a domino effect. If it started off with us as a big agency that's supporting cultural organizations throughout the world, it's bound to reach our local partners as well. So I think in preparation for that, we also, you know, we put a huge emphasis on the communication aspect of it, on why it's relevant that you actually speak out loud when you speak out, and you don't only sort of work on a small basis for the, you know, usual suspects, for the, you know, the converted, if you will, sort of preaching to the converted. So I think it's about having a more broader look on things.